Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. How you doing on this morning? Good morning. How are you on this awesome morning? I know that we got off of 10:30 for a while, and it's going to take people just a second to realize that I am on because we've been doing 12:10. Good morning. But if you can take the time just to share the video, tag somebody in it, and let them know that I am on, I greatly appreciate it. Going to get started in just about 1 second. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. On this morning, I just want to share with you. I was thinking, good morning. I was thinking earlier about the difference between shifting and in a place of stagnation. Shifting or stagnation. And so I was talking to God and talking about how the difference in seeing people, because people have gotten frustrated, people have gotten in a place of giving up on the ministry or the business or the thing that God has given them to do, because they feel like it's just stagnant, it's not going anywhere. I stepped out to do a thing that God has given me to do, but it don't seem like it's flourishing. It don't seem like nobody is coming on my lives. It don't seem like nobody's supporting me. It does not seem like nobody is following the vision that I know that I heard from God. And there's a lot of frustration going on. And so they're starting to give up on the thing that God has given them because they start looking at it as if it's being stagnant, as if it's been stagnant. Now, I looked up the word stagnation, and it means stagnation happens when you don't have anything in life that motivates you enough to take sustained steps towards going to the thing that you know that God has given you to do. So we have gotten to a place that no longer am I being motivated. So I just stop. I quit. I don't drive at it as much because it don't seem like it's prospering. Don't seem like it's going nowhere. The Lord started dropping back in my spirit again, talking about Elisha. When the word was given to Elisha to go to the brook of Cherith, that we can easily look at it and say that he got in a stagnant place, because no longer was water being provided, no longer was the raven coming providing him food. So immediately he could have got in a place to say, I'm stagnant. I'm stagnant. I'm not growing here anymore. Nothing is no longer motivating me. Nothing is no longer feeding me. Nothing is no longer pushing me. But God was not leading him in a place of stagnation. God was actually leading him into a place of shift. And so we think because it's not moving as fast, it's not growing. I'm talking to nobody. Nobody's coming on. Nobody's pushing me. Nobody's showing up on what I know that God has given me to do. So I start looking at it as stagnation. It's not stagnation, it's actually shift. God is actually saying, shifting you to another place. You're looking at it as being dry. You're looking at it as a place that I'm not going nowhere. But God is actually saying, I'm calling you to a place of shift. Why are you still pushing and driving at the same place? And God is not saying, I'm calling you now to move. Elisha stayed in that place, and Elisha was steady looking for the brook to continue to give him water. He was steady looking at the raven to continue to feed him, because he knew that he stepped out on a place that God has called him forth to be. I know I heard from you, God. I know I'm moving. I know I'm operating. There's no doubt in my mind, God, that I know that you're speaking to me. But right now, everything just seems like it is dry. God is saying, you are not in a place of stagnation. You're in a place of shifting. I'm calling you to shift, because what I've called you to do in that particular place, you've already done it. And so now, what I once called you to do, and I once called to feed you, now I'm calling you now to shift to another place, because there's an assignment somewhere else. We keep thinking because God told us to do it at this time. God told us to do it at that time. God told us to do this. God told us to do that. And we think because God has spoken to us 2 months ago that the directions have not now begun to change. When you're driving, when you're driving, if you stay on, if I'm headed to New York and I know it takes me 95 north to get there, and I start feeling like I'm not going nowhere. It seems like I'm seeing the same size. I did everything. I know I got out here, Lord. I started following your word. God, I start doing what you have commanded. But it seemed like New York is steady getting further and further because I stayed operating off of one word and I didn't listen to hear when it was time to shift. You're stuck. And it's not that God is not giving you what he has called you to do. God is telling you now, I'm calling you to shift. There are times in our ministry that we got to move, we got to operate, we got to do the thing that God has called us to do. But we have to know when it's time to shift in direction. I never forget when I was learning how to drive a 5-speed that I couldn't stay in first gear. I couldn't stay in second gear. I couldn't stay in third, neither fourth. When God was calling me to shift up, to shift to the next place. Oftentimes, we hear the rearing up of the RPMs in our spirit, but we refuse to move because we stay so dedicated to a brook that has already dried up. We stay so dedicated to a raven that's no longer feeding us because we want to stay there, because we want to prove to people that I stepped out off of what God has commanded us to do. And it's not that we are not doing what God has called us to do. God is saying, now I've called you to do that, but now I'm shifting you to do something else. Don't stay so dedicated and stay in a place of stagnation in your spirit. Stay so stagnated in your ministry, in your marriage, in your home, and doing the things that God has spoken and declared for you to do in 1999. And here it is, 2024, and you still trying to stay stuck to that particular place. And God is saying, where I've called you now, I'm calling you now to shift. The only reason that you're feeling this stagnation is because you're too dedicated to the dry brook more than you are to the word that God is speaking to you. God is speaking to you, no doubt. But sometimes God has to dry up everything. Nobody's showing up. Nobody's coming. Nobody's doing it. Because sometimes God is saying, I need for you to shift. I need for you to do. There's a whole nother audience that I'm trying to reach. You can't reach people if you're so private. You can't reach people. You can't reach your audience if they don't know that you're coming on. You can't reach your audience if you're not willing to step out of the box and do something different. You can't reach the audience that God has called you forth to walk, the walk to, or to minister to, because you so stuck in doing it the way that I want to do it, when I want to do it, and how I want to do it. Listen, that I even had to, I said to one of my friends earlier, I said that I knew that this season right here was a reality check for me. I was looking at it as being stagnant. I was looking at it as being stagnant. And instead, God was calling me to shift. And because I was used to what I was used to, I was used to doing it the way I was doing it. I was used to walking the way that I walk. I was used to praying the way that I pray and reading the way I read. And God was like, no, I'm calling you to do something different. So I got so frustrated, and this is transparency for me. I got so frustrated in my personal ministry, my personal business, as well, because I was like, God, I know you called me to do this. I know that you called me to start this business. I know that you have, but I started getting stagnant. I started looking like, where the people at? Where the people at to my ministry? Where the people at in my business? Where they at? Because I started looking at it as being stagnant. And God was saying, I was calling you to shift. I didn't tell you that it was over. I was telling you it's not, I'm not calling you to another place, another area in ministry. I'm calling you to another area in your business. God had to wake up something on the inside of me because I was saying, God, I'm used to doing it like this. I'm used to staying in the box. I'm used to just showing up on my live. I'm and God is saying, no, I'm calling you to a whole nother group of people that's really ready to hear the word that you have. But if you don't shift, you're gonna continue to dry up at the ditch that you keep waiting to feed you. And you can't feed other people when you have gotten stagnant and dried up your own self. Everybody that's trying to pop up with all these lives, they're trying to minister, they're trying to minister off the fly. It takes strategy. It takes strategy. You can't just show up whenever you feel like it. You can't do it how you want to do it, when you want to do it, with no strategy, no motivation, no nothing. Nothing ain't driving you. You want to feed somebody else, but yet you stagnate your own self. You're not motivated your own self. And God is saying, I'm calling you to shift, shift, shift. Occupy until he come. But occupy until he come does not necessarily mean that I'm staying in the same place, doing it the same way at all. God may be saying, I'm calling you. I dried up everything. I dried up everything in your life because I was creating a stirring in your spirit to make you shift to another place. But sometimes we be so in control of the outcome that we refuse to shift to do it the way that God has called us to do it because we keep doing it the way that we want to do it because we're trying to control the narrative. I just talked about this to my ministers on last night. God is saying, no, you try to control something that I call you to do. God is the author and the finisher of our faith. That when God has called us to do a thing, it's not our job to figure out how it's going to work. It's our job to have faith to step out and do it the way that he called us to do it. If you feeling stagnant, it's probably because God is saying, I'm calling you to shift. And you refuse to shift. So you keep trying to feed and drink at the brook of Cherith. And God is no longer there. He's now moved to Zarephath. And he provided a widow to feed you there. But because you refuse to move, and you know, I'm doing it this way, I'm doing it my way, I'm not moving, you're stagnant. And nobody's showing up because they see the frustration on you. The last people that people want to draw from is people that are stagnant and frustrated in their own ministry. You trying to feed me when you're hungry yourself. When you're hungry for instructions, when you're hungry for direction, when you're hungry for the next move, when your hunger is outweighing your obedience, you will dry up. How can you lead anybody else? The blind can't lead the blind. When you're unsure of the direction that God has given you, you will never be able to take nobody to the next place. You will remain stagnant where you are until you hear from God and move in the direction that God has called you to walk in. Are you stagnant or are you in the shift? You can remain stagnant, but I promise you, I'm shifting as God shifts me to the next place. I pray that this word has been a blessing to you. I pray that it has helped you out of your place of stagnation and that you're now getting up out of the place that you're in, ready to prepare to shift to the next place. Shift to your next element. Because listen, you can die there if you want to. You can die waiting on the raven to come and for the water to show up. But I promise you, you will die in that place until you shift to the next place. God is calling you to shift. Stop being stagnant. Stop being stubborn. You so stubborn to what God has spoken to you 10 years ago. because you refuse to shift. You're stubborn. You're stubborn. And your stubbornness has left you in a place of stagnation. God has called you to shift. God has called you to shift. I pray that this word has been a blessing to you. Listen, don't dry up with the brook. God is calling you to do something greater. Never in my life have I appreciated my ministry more now after I started understanding the desire of where God is calling me to shift at. You got to shift. Simply put, you got to shift, or you will continue to dry up. You will continue to stay dry. Nobody showing up to hear. You got awesome word. There's nothing wrong with your word. There's something wrong with your obedience. God is not going to give you a command to do something and nobody ain't never showing up to hear the word that you have to give. He's calling you to shift. You're stagnant. You're stagnant because of your obedience. Don't be so hooked on, I got to do it this way. More like your way than God's way. Because I'm telling you, you will miss the shift and you will remain stagnant until you begin to do it God's way. I'm telling you, God is a perfect teacher. When I refused to walk forth ministry, and I kept saying, no, I don't want to do it. Get somebody else. Call somebody else. God, I don't want to do it. And listen, God dried up my business. I was looking out the window saying, where's my clients? Where are they? Because God was like, no, I'm not going to continue to feed you here when I'm calling you to do something else. Listen, he dried up every single time. He dried my business up, what was feeding me and my family, until I started operating in his obedience. When God was calling me to do something, even now in the salon that I'm in now, God started drying up everything until I started saying, yes, God, I do the business. God, I start teaching the classes. God, I start being faithful. I start waking up at 4:00 in the morning. I start laying on my face. I start doing what you have called me for to do. God said, I dry up everything that you've been praying for. Everything your heart desire, I dried up until you walk in my obedience. I'm not telling you something I heard. I'm telling you something that I know. Until you get into a place that God has called you forth to be, you will continue to be stagnant in everything that you do until you shift to do the thing that God has called, commanded over your life. I'm telling you, if you're in a dry place, it's because God is calling you someplace else. God, you're anointed by God. You're chosen by God. You're called by God. There's a word in your belly. There's a word in your mouth. You think that God is going to continue to allow you to preach to people that nobody ain't never going to? That the word, he is the word. And he's going to continue to allow you to show up where nobody's coming, where nobody's being blessed, nobody is listening, nobody is coming. Absolutely not. Obedience. He's calling you to shift. Now that I've shifted, more and more people now is coming to my 8:00 morning service. More and more people now are showing up on my lives. More and more people now are showing up and saying that they've been blessed, inboxing me, all because I was obedient to doing what he has commanded. Now I see the abundance and the blessings now, even in my finances, in my business, because I operated off of the shift, the obedience. You steady being there. You're stagnant. Like, God, come on. I want to help somebody because I'm probably not going to do Bible study tonight. So I want to help somebody on Quick Word Tuesday. It might be a longer Word Tuesday. Let's say that. But listen, it's all because it's calling you to shift. Shift. When I try to do it my way, God showed me more and more. You're going to do it my way. You're going to do it my way. You're going to do it my way. Dee Dee, you gonna listen and you gonna obey. Hey, you can keep fighting, you can keep pushing. The more you keep fighting, keep pushing. Listen, I'm telling you, he ain't gonna never let success come to it until you shift. When I started shifting, people started showing up. When I started shifting, when I started doing the way that God called me to do it, I don't care the way nobody else is doing it. I have to be obedient to what he said, how he say do it. Yeah, Sister Tanya Hudson, until you stop being stubborn. There's something off of Todd Gabriel's song that he talks about being with the potter. He actually went to a place where the potter was shaping and making clay. And he was like, nah, it didn't turn out the way that I wanted it to. So I'm just throw it away. The potter said to him, no, keep bringing it over. Keep you just keep starting all over. He smashed the clay down and he started forming it all over again. He said that he said to the potter, how long do I keep doing this? He said, until they stop fighting. You're fighting and you're not able to show up in the form that God has called you forth to walk in or call you forth to be, because you keep fighting and resisting God. So you remain stagnant. You're stubborn. And he said, how do I know that they're ready? He said, the potter said back to them, when they stop fighting. When the clay, we're the clay. God is the potter. When they stop fighting the potter and they yield, they surrender to the shaping, they surrender to the making, they surrender to the molding, they surrender to his will, they surrender to his way. That's when that they will start seeing the shaping begin to come into play. Now, God is saying you ain't never not good enough. You ain't never not qualified enough. You ain't never not anything. What I call you to do is to surrender. Surrender. You're only stagnant because you keep fighting God. God, I keep fighting you. I keep fighting. I want it. My God. God ain't used to this. God, I don't like how this feel. God, me. God, why I can't be successful like them? God, why can't all the people show up like how they showing up for them? God said, you ain't ready. Let me keep forming you. I ain't ready to get out at 4:00 in the morning. God said, let me mash you back down. Let me form you some more. I ain't ready to submit a pastor's leadership. I think that God just called me to be at the house to run do my own thing. God said, nope, you ain't ready yet. Because how can you hear without a preacher? And how can they preach unless they be sent? So all the stuff that you're trying to do, God said, I ain't going to allow it to ever happen until you surrender and you be obedient to what that I have set in place. And once you've been obedient, they're ready now. They're ready. They're now starting to look like what I was forming them in, how I was creating them, how I was shaping them, how I was making them, how I was molding them, how I was redeeming them, how I was preparing them for such a time as this. God ain't going to ever give you the platform. He's not going to ever give you the business. He's not going to ever give you the thing that you keep saying that I want until you surrender to the potter and let him make you. You're not shifting. That's how come you're stagnant. Yes, it hurt, Sister Deborah Thompson. It hurt. Yes, surrender to the shaping and obedience of his voice. Yes, Aunt Daisy. Yes, prophetess. Yes, that is what God is saying. And until you do it, that's when you start seeing the manifestation of what I spoke over your life. That's when you'll start seeing it. That's when he'll start revealing it. God is not revealed to you what's next until you've been obedient to him in the place that seems dry. Once you start being obedient in that place, he said, now I'm ready. Now I give it to them. Now I restore them. Now I give them the finances. Now I give them the ministry. Now I give them the business because I can trust them. God never give anything to people that he can't trust. And so until he can trust you with being obedient at the brook, you will never be able to see Zarephath. You'll never see the people that's called to your ministry, that sow into your ministry, that be the wood carrier in your ministry, that help you to get to the next place until you do what God has spoken to you to be able to do. This is not quick word, but medium word Tuesday. I pray that you have been blessed. I pray that you have been blessed. Listen, if you think that you want more and you saying, hey, Pastor Deidre, I need more of what you've spoken at this moment, drop in the comments and we'll readjust some things and we'll show up at 6 p.m. But if you say, hey, I'm good, I see you Friday morning or Sunday morning at service, I'll rock with what you gave me. I'm good too. But I'm telling you, God is setting us up. God is setting us up for our next. Don't miss it because you're afraid of walking it out his way. Nah, you're trying to control the narrative. My job is to trust his word. His job is to make sure that they come to pass. This is medium word Tuesday. I pray that it's been a blessing to you. Drop down in the comments if this word has been a blessing to you. Hey guys, sow into my ministry. Send me some stars. Send me some shares. Don't keep coming on here getting full, getting your belly full, and don't want to be a blessing back to what God has called and commanded for us to do this ministry. I'm telling you, we're doing some stuff and they ain't no stopping us now. I love you guys with the God kind of love that he has placed on the inside of me. I want to see all of us do great things for the kingdom because God is calling us to shift. Have an awesome and wonderful day, and to God be all of the glory.